So welcome back to Tiny Table Big Questions. I'm Andrew Harper. I'm the student pastor here, and we do have some new faces this week. So we're going to go around the table. Davis, will you introduce yourself and tell us who you are and what you do?
Yeah, my name's Davis Caperton. I am the music intern here. So I work hand in hand with Tim on worship every Sunday and
so
rehearsals
hold hands
throughout
every
the
week?
No, we don't hold hands.
You don't hold hands.
We arm wrestle. But yeah, no, super blessed to have that position. Yeah.
Awesome.
I'm Tim McGill. I'm the worship pastor here, coming up on, just went past 4 years here. And so Davis, a huge help each week. But, yeah, just lead services and plan stuff and rehearsals and all that stuff. So it's a lot going on, but it's a lot of fun as well.
I'm Cole Carr. I'm pretty new here to the staff. I am the director of communications here, so a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff, social media, behind the camera on some podcasts and stuff like that. But really blessed and privileged to be here.
Sweet. So this week we're going to talk about just worship. We're living in unprecedented times. We're living in new times and trying to figure out how things are. And one of those things that can be difficult is just the way that sometimes we come accustomed to worshiping. They're not happening right now. They're just different. And I think it gives us an opportunity to take a fresh look at what worship really is. So real quick, I just wanted to kind of let you kind of go around the table and give us a definition of what is worship, and maybe kind of in that definition, maybe explain, is that something that only goes on at church or church camp or church events, or is worship something that maybe is beyond that? And we'll start with you, Tim.
Yeah, it's definitely not something that's that happens just at church. I think if I had to, look at it in what is a definition of worship, it's something, it's you just acknowledging in yourself that there's something greater than I am, that there's something bigger and more powerful than I am, and I want to be mastered by that. And that's it's a really cool thing and a really scary thing, because in our world we can give ourselves to a lot of things that we think are that we have to have or whatever. So to me, worship is just a recognition that God is all powerful, that God is worthy of our attention. God's worthy of all that we can offer Him, and giving that to Him. And then, and I believe Scripture is very clear that obviously the church is a place for worship, but it is not the only place for worship, and we can do that outside of that a lot. So.
Yeah, one thing that you said was talking about how our hearts is kind of, we're built towards that. We're leaning towards worship. One great European theologian said that our hearts are idol factories, and basically what he goes on to say is that if we're not worshiping God, we will be worshiping something. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something we have to be really diligent with and intentional in. And I think understanding what worship is allows us to maybe not jump into worshiping something else. Mm-hmm. Because for me, for a long time, I thought worship was just music. So as long as I wasn't singing towards basketball, then I wasn't worshiping it. You know, as long as I wasn't, chanting towards that or singing songs about basketball, that's fine. Yeah. But as I got older and I began to understand that's not really what worship is, I realized that maybe I did have some areas in my life that worship wasn't sitting right.
And when we have that thought that it only happens in one place, I think that's really where we get thrown off. Because if we, if you don't play basketball in the worship center, then you've not, but if you think about basketball all other times except for when you're in the worship center, then you're not really worshiping. And one of the coolest passages I think of that I've seen is it's John 4, where Jesus is with the woman at the well, and she says, our fathers worshipped up on this mountain, and Jesus says, well, there's a time that's coming. He said, when man won't have to worship in places like this, man will worship God in spirit and in truth. And so he right then began to just break down the barriers and saying, hey, quit thinking that it has to happen here, and that your worship goes with you.
For many of us, we're very rigid in our what we do every day. Like we wake up, we do the same thing. Very just every day is a process, and it's just this repeat. And I think a lot of times we can kind of fall into that thinking that that's how worship is. It's just like, okay, worship this time and do it this way and this, and if anything outside of that box blows us away, whether that's a time, a place,
Yep.
a style, those kind of things. Davis, you are a little closer to maybe some of those that are going to listen. You are in college at University of Memphis. Tim and I are the old guys in the room.
Just turned 30. You got to bring that up.
Yeah. And when you think about what worship is, specifically that, like, how would you define that?
Right. So, worship, to me, there are no boundaries to it. We've been hearing a lot with everything that's been going on that, worship doesn't just happen within a building. And I know it can sometimes seem redundant whenever we say that, but it reigns so true. Like, for me, I find myself worshiping when I'm driving to the church, whenever I'm driving to a restaurant, because I'm listening to music, no matter what style it may be. We've talked about Christian rap, and
Yeah.
I also listen to the contemporary stuff that we sing, but I also listen to good old hymns. And, I sing in the car or wherever, and that's worship to me. And, sometimes it doesn't even have to be about music. Like you said, you thought it was all about music. It doesn't always have to be. I find myself just talking to God like I'm talking to you right now. And I just tell what's on my heart. And to me, that's worship. I'm glorifying God through what I'm doing. And, if someone pulls up next to me on the road, they probably think I'm a lunatic because I'm just singing and talking to myself. But to me, that's what it's really all about. It's just whatever you're doing, do it to glorify God.
Yeah.
And that's worship to me.
Have you ever had to battle through the thought process that church was the only place that you worshiped, or it had to be a specific style for you to be able to worship?
Yeah, so not so much on the style, but on the idea of that worship takes place in the church. So when I was in high school, for a lot of it, I was the student that I just went to church because that's what my parents said we were doing on Sunday. And so it was like, okay, well, we're going to sing, and so we'll worship there, and then throughout the rest of the week, do my own thing. But I've slowly come to understand through my love of music and through my love of the Lord that that's not the case at all. Yeah. And worship is a very precious thing because there's a lot of places around the world where if you worship in any way, you could be in prison, anything like that. And so sometimes I feel like we take worship for granted. And so so anywhere is a place of worship to me. So,
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Cole, when you think about what is worship, maybe, and then kind of piggyback off of that, is it something, we've grown up, I've known you for a long time, like, has there ever been a time where you thought, like, oh, worship only fits in this box? Have you ever tried to fit it in something? And then maybe how would you define that to somebody that's listening today?
Yeah, so definitely in high school, I would love worship. I mean, my favorite part of this, like, service, like, sermon was good, but I was ready for worship. My favorite part every week. That's how I kind of viewed worship, was just, the 4 songs before the sermon or before the service. And then it wasn't until probably I got into college that God kind of showed me it with prayer also. I'll kind of get into that in a second. It's more of a posture or an attitude with your heart towards God. It speaks in scripture as like rocks crying out his name and praising him, and they're not singing, obviously, with an audible voice. So God really showed me that, like, I'll piggyback what he was saying, is like, whatever you do, do it all for his glory, and in that you're praising him and worshiping him. Yeah,
for me, a lot of times it comes down to making sure that I have God in the right place. That God is sitting on the throne room of my heart. Like, something's sitting there. It may be my family, it may be myself, it may be, for me, for a long time, it was sports, it was basketball, it was what people thought about me. A lot of things can sit there on that throne in our heart, but for me, when it comes down to worship and making sure that I'm worshiping well and worshiping correct, is that God has to be sitting there, in his throne, in his place, and that's going to begin to allow me to, it's not going to be like God and then this, and this. Like, as long as God and Jesus, as long as they're sitting in the right place in my life, like, everything else is going to kind of fall into place, because when I'm worshiping him well, I'm not worshiping other things the way that I maybe find myself doing that at times. Tim, when you go into planning a worship time, you recognize that every Sunday there are probably people that come to church, or every Wednesday when we have youth worship service, student worship service, there are people that come that they're just like what David said. They kind of they put their identity, or the identity of worship and the thought process of worship fits into this parameters, kind of what these guys said, like these 4 songs. Like, you plan with that in mind, I know, every week. Like, what kind of goes into you planning a worship service, and even maybe trying to, within singing those songs, trying to break down some of those barriers that this is the only time that worship happens?
Yeah, so I've really kind of grown in this over the past few years because I've really struggled with it because everybody plans differently. You have some people that plan, they may have an idea at the beginning of the week and that's what they plan on. Or some they plan thematically. So they take from their pastor, hey, this is what I'm preaching on. Okay, well, I have to plan service around that theme. I go more of, I sit down and really just kind of start with nothing, start from zero, and let the Lord kind of go. And it may be He puts a song in my head, I'll begin to just listen to music, or I'll begin to look through some of our books or something and start to see, all right, what is this? Or maybe somebody has mentioned a song throughout the week and start to look at that. And then the Lord will begin to, as I just kind of shut the door and spend time with Him, He'll begin to build off of that. Planning is one of the most difficult things I do because at any time, especially when we're all able to be together, at any time in one given room, you are speaking to about 4 different generations, and every generation likes what they like, and every generation wants what they want. And so I struggled with, especially early on in my ministry, trying to meet the needs of each one of those. Mm-hmm. And in about a 22-minute worship set, you cannot meet the needs of 4 generations and everybody walk out happy. So I had to really get this resolve in my mind that I'm not there to make anybody happy. I'm there to glorify God. And so the one thing that I do in planning worship is we don't do any music that is not scripturally sound, obviously. So there's that. It's all about the lyrics first, and then if the lyrics are solid, then it supports Scripture. And there's some days, man, it may support right in line with what Brother Billy's preaching. And there may be some days I'm in left field, he's in right field, and you just, but I go, just like Brother Billy doesn't come and ask me, hey, what's the music going to be on? That's how I'm going to write my sermon. I have always felt strongly that I'm not going to go to Brother Billy and say, hey, what are you preaching on? That's how I'm going to plan the music. Because to me, that kind of is my sermon. That's how I plan, although I'm using other people's words and other people's music. So when I plan, I really try to rely on the Lord. I really try not to think of other people and, they would like this or they would like this. Because if I do that, then I really feel like I'm starting to plan for people and not for the Lord. Yeah. And then if it's scripturally sound, then honestly, style-wise, doesn't really matter to me. I may do, we may do Worthy of Worship on one and maybe Elevations Sea of Victory on the next song. And the more I've done this, the less and less I've put emphasis.
I'm still waiting for you to bust out a rap one Sunday.
Yeah, we've not quite gotten there, or like a spoken word, but yeah, maybe one day. But the style doesn't really matter as much to me as much as the words, and then is it what the Lord has put on my heart to plan? Yeah. Because if you plan for what people want, that's
always difficult.
It is difficult because
a lot of people preach what people want too,
and people definitely share their opinion with you with what they want. So, so I always have that in the back of my mind in case anything else fails.
David, the summer you've gotten, spring and summer, I know it's been different, but you've gotten to see a little more behind the veil of what goes into planning a worship service. How has your thought process, I know that you already did some things like that, but how has your thought process maybe changed as you see maybe a more detailed approach than what you had expected?
Yeah, that's a good question. This is kind of cool that you're asking me this because we've been talking recently about this kind of stuff, about planning and everything like that. Before, if Tim had asked me to pick out a song or to plan an entire worship service, I probably would have just picked music that I liked, and I liked, the beat behind it, and you can't really do that.
I thought you were about to dance there.
No, I'm not dancing, no. But you can't really do that all the time just based off of your own preference, which I love all worship music, but we all have our style choices and everything. So, that's why I'm thankful I'm in this position, because Tim's been able to mentor me and tell me, how he thinks about it and how he goes about it. And it's really helped me a lot, I like how he talked about the lyrics, because a lot of what I think about is, what are we singing about? Because like I said, and what Cole said, it was kind of, whenever we were younger, we went through the motions of worship. It was just, kind of what we did. But just to really sit and think about what we're singing about really hits home with me and helps me with planning worship music.
Yeah.
So if we're singing about, Christ dying on the cross for us, then, the next song would be great to sing about, what we can give him and what we can do. And so that's the biggest thing that I've learned from Tim and from planning for worship is, what are you singing about, and are you intentional about it? And that's the biggest thing I've gotten from it.
Life is always better when you're intentional, I think.
Yeah.
And he's actually been, I think today he's planning his first service. He's leading one in a couple weeks.
Nice.
So,
That's
kind of
awesome.
coming right on the day that we're working on that. So we're going to look
keeping
at that
it
after
fresh.
this.
The day is coming. Yeah.
So, Cole, you have a unique opportunity a lot of times during worship services, because you are behind the camera. And you recognize that what you bring may not necessarily even add in the moment. But a lot of times I know where you used to go to church, you would put out a video during the week of the previous week, or maybe for Merge, you've made videos for us or D Now. Like, how do you look at that as being a part of adding to worship, even if maybe it's not in that moment?
I think the biggest thing for me is when I felt called to ministry. I was trying to let the Lord show me what tools that I had that He wanted to use, and that was a hard thing to figure out. Like, how could you use this, Lord? Like, I know He uses it, but how are you using it? And I always explain to people that the gospel is presented many different ways, and if I can help picture that for a certain audience, if it's a video, if a video appeals to certain people more so than a written word or something like that, that I'm serving in the gospel in the capacity of I am controlling how it's viewed or how it's perceived through the video. And so if I can better depict what the speaker is trying to say, or through the video, or through, if it's a song or whatever it is, that I'm doing what I'm supposed to do as far as getting the word out to this generation or a different generation, depending on what the video or verse service is.
Let's piggyback that off. You said when you felt called to ministry, you were trying to figure out how could God use the gifts that you felt like you already had.
Yeah.
You didn't necessarily expect God to give you more gifts. Now, He will, maybe at different times. But I would imagine that there's probably students that are listening, and we can go around the table here that say, like, I want to serve the Lord, but I don't know necessarily how to do that.
Yeah.
When you're talking about, like, well, I realize, like, I'm already drawn towards making videos and doing production style stuff. Your question more was like, all right, God, how can you use this? And instead of saying like, okay, like I got to throw that completely to the side. Like, could you maybe expound on that for a second?
Yeah. So back when the Lord called me to ministry, I was serving in any capacity I could. If it was stacking chairs, if it was somebody did a video or something, and I asked God, what are you wanting me to do? And I feel like the biggest thing in ministry, not only the gifts that you're given, like in music or whatever you may be doing, but His spiritual gift to me is willingness.
Mm-hmm.
And so I told God, I'm willing to do whatever you want me to do, and put the tools in my hand, or show me the tools that I already have that can help me do that. So that may be going and helping set up, be a blueprint member, or it may be helping lead worship, or working in the sound booth. Maybe you're not ever seen, but if you're being willing to let God use you, God will provide you the tools or show you what tools you have to serve.
Yeah. Tim, you mentioned a minute ago that people love to express their opinion.
Yeah.
And they, and that's the great thing about opinions. We all have them. Most of them stink. But when someone comes up to you and says, like, I didn't like that style, or I didn't know that song, how am I supposed to worship? Like, where would you kind of point them? I know that you probably have some scripture, but also probably some practical advice to somebody in that setting. First, maybe a student, somebody that's in middle school or high school or college, or maybe even an adult that they're listening with their students. Like, and they come in on a Sunday or Wednesday and they're like, man, I don't know this song, or I don't like this style. Like, how can they learn to worship during those times beyond just waiting for their preference to be played?
Yeah, that that's one of those questions I love and hate those kinds of questions, because there's this thing that's been going on for years and years called worship wars, between like traditional and contemporary and all this stuff. And I did this in Merge a few years ago. One of my favorite things to do is, as I did it in a room full of students, I had a whiteboard, and I drew a line down the middle, and I wrote traditional on one side and contemporary on the other. And I said, all right, let's plan a service together. And so we walked through and did like, on the traditional side. So we maybe do like A Mighty Fortress Is Our God, and then you put like some Victory in Jesus or Power in the Blood, that kind of stuff in there. So I did that, and then I got to the contemporary side, and they had like, all these songs. We're writing all these songs down and doing. So then I stopped them, and I said, okay, look at this board and tell me which one of these is worship and which one isn't. And, and they were like, well, you can't do that. Yeah. And so you can't, I would just tell them, stop looking at it as something that you like. And I have a quote here. Bob Coughlin has a definition of biblical worship. He said it's God's covenant people recognizing, reveling in, and responding rightly to the glory of God in Christ and the power of the Holy Spirit. And so one of my, first of all, one of my questions back to them is, okay, when you looked at the song and the words that we sang, did you have any issue with those?
Yeah.
And I hope in most cases that, especially songs we sing here, that people don't. I've had several people ask me questions. Hey, what does that mean? What is it? Drake is one of the biggest ones. He'll come up and ask me a question all the time. And I love it, because I love to be checked on that stuff. So one is I would ask him about that. Hey, is there anything with the words that you had a problem with? And in most cases, it's no. And then you ask them, what did you have the problem with? Well, I didn't like the way it sounded, or it was too loud, or that sounded too old, or anything like that. And I would then tell them that has nothing to do with worship. That has everything to do with your preference. And so I would encourage them, if you get to something maybe you don't know, then spend time. I know there's always this battle, screens, no screens, that kind of thing. One of the things I love about the screens is it puts the words in front of people. Yep. And so if you don't know the song, just read the words. Mm-hmm. And as this said, revel in the glory of God as someone else may be singing that. And if you don't like it, then I would honestly sing it anyway. It doesn't matter what you like. That's not why we're here. Yeah. And honestly, if you'll wait a song or two, there's probably going to come one up that you like. And so my thing with them would just be, one, do your homework and check and make sure that maybe it's not something in your spirit. Maybe you just don't like it, but maybe it's something there that shouldn't be there. And then talk to somebody about it. But also, my thing is just take the time, and no matter what it is, whether you like it or not, recognize the glory of God in it and revel in it, and take the time to worship that. Maybe it's reading, maybe it's sitting quietly, whatever it is. But you can worship in styles that you don't like or styles that you don't know. It's just just reminding ourselves that we're not there for ourselves.
In life, rarely does growth come comfortably. Mm-hmm. And I always think about like my stylistic preference when I get outside of my comfort zone. Oftentimes it's because I'm learning to grow. Mm-hmm. I'm learning like listening to the lyrics, or what does that say? And I think that's oftentimes where we get stuck, is like we like what we like. And but the beautiful thing is when we get to heaven, like we don't, it's going to be new for us.
I would also encourage and I love intergenerational stuff. Mm-hmm. So maybe for a student who goes, man, I don't like those hymns, go sit with a senior adult in our church and ask them, what is your favorite hymn and why is it your favorite hymn? Yep. And I would encourage also our senior adults to sit with a student and say, tell me why you like, Christian, tell me your favorite Christian rap song, and tell me how, start sharing the testimony of how God is using that in your life. Yeah. And I think we'll begin to break down barriers, and two, we'll have generations teaching each other, which, man, I think if our churches could really get a hold of that concept, we'd absolutely be unstoppable.
Davis, you mentioned how you are the weirdo that drives down the street and sings and talks to yourself. No. You talked about there being a shift for you and how how your thought process of music and worship really shifted. What are some things that played into that? Was it just you got into the Word more? You began to take your faith more seriously? Maybe really quickly, what are some things that played into helping that shift be made?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. Honestly, the biggest thing that affected my shift was my answer to the call to ministry. So from my belief and from the way I felt, from the time I was 16, I felt the call to ministry, and now I'm 21. And so I was 20 when I accepted the call to ministry. So I fought the call to ministry for 4 years. And I don't know about you, and I don't know about you, and I don't know about you, but fighting that call is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And not even necessarily just relating to music, just ministry in general. If you're trying to fight God, you're not going to win. It's just the facts. And so I finally sat down and looked at myself, and I said, this is what I'm meant to do, and I don't have a doubt in my mind. And so after I accepted that call, it was like a weight got lifted off my shoulders. And so then I said, well, what would be the smartest way for me to utilize myself in ministry? What can I do? And that was right around whenever I was coming here, and so I texted Tim and I was like, hey, I want to play in the orchestra. The God has given me an incredible gift as an instrumental musician, and I want to use that to glorify Him. And so accepting the call to ministry was the biggest thing. And I can honestly say that if you've ever wanted to sing in church, in the choir or the praise team, or play in the orchestra with your primary instrument, I've never done anything so fun in my life. I'm telling you right now, it is so fun, and you'll never want to not do it if you try it. And so that was the biggest shift for me, was just when I accepted that call to ministry, and I said, music is a gift that God has given me, and so I'm going to put 2 and 2 together, music and ministry. And so that was the biggest shift for me. Yeah.
And that was free airtime for a commercial there. So,
well,
Cole, when you think about just worshiping in a pandemic, or you think about just worshiping in general, if you got 30, 40 seconds to tell somebody, like, this is what I wish I could communicate to everybody, what would it be?
I think that no matter where you are, if you're here on Sunday morning or if you're behind a screen, we're in a unique time where we are realizing, like we're here today, what worship actually is. And so if you are at home behind a screen, or if you're in another country and you're not allowed to openly worship, or if you're front row, worship God with your whole heart and glorify Him, because it does not matter the time, the place, if you're in your car, where it is. You can worship God wherever you are.
Yeah. Tim?
Ask the question again.
If you could take 30, 40 seconds to leave somebody just, hey, this is what I wish you would recognize about worship, or maybe it's this what I wish you would recognize about worship right now during the pandemic, what would you say?
Yeah, during the pandemic, one of the things I would definitely say is sing anyway. Whether you're sitting down in the sanctuary, some people think you have to stand up to sing. Sing anyway. Whether you're sitting at home, sing anyway, and that will really help to prepare your heart for the message and that continuation of worship that Brother Billy does. One thing about worship is be a personal worshiper. Worship is not just music. Worship is not just service. Worship is all of those things. It's studying, it's prayer, it's singing, it's service, it's all of that. And Romans 12 says, "Be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may present your bodies a living sacrifice. This is your spiritual service of worship." So give your whole self to worship. If you're a personal worshiper first, that will absolutely transform your worship in church or in the car, wherever you are.
Yeah. Davis?
Yeah. We talked about earlier about how there might be someone out there who's struggling with how can I serve in the church and how can I minister to people, whether that's serving in ministry or just doing your part for your community and for God. And the best piece of advice I've ever gotten whenever I made that commitment to ministry is that no matter if you're a high school pastor, a sports pastor, or a music pastor, or you're involved in those areas, at the end of the day, you're a pastor, no matter your specialization. And so that's the biggest piece of advice I want to give is no matter if you sing in the choir on Sunday, you come and, you volunteer here and work in the offices or anything like that, at the end of the day, you're a disciple and you're a believer and you're in a church that loves you. And at the end of the day, you're worshiping God who loves you. And so that's the biggest thing I would say.
Yeah. I recently read a book, and I think I've mentioned it a couple other weeks, and Cole and I were talking about it, but there was a quote in that book that just totally kind of it kind of rocked my world the way I looked at some things. And the author said, if your faith would not work in another country, like if it wouldn't work in another place, then your faith is flawed. And like he was talking about just being a believer in general in America versus other places. And I think when I think about worship, a lot of times, like it kind of comes down to something along the same lines. Like if I think worship only is one way, then my thoughts of worship is flawed. Because worship comes in a lot of shapes and forms, and it reveals itself whether you're in a deer stand, on a boat, or whatever individually. But then being able to come together and worship corporately is special. I love to sit in the back of the room because I'm tall, and I hate people having to try to look around me, or especially them looking at me. But I always love to sit in the back of the room and be able to look at a room that is actually worshiping. They're not just singing. They're not just trying to play a role, but they're actually worshiping the Lord. And I think if we can get over this thought process that worship has to fit in this box, then we can really kind of find ourselves truly worshiping in our lifestyle. Well, I appreciate y'all joining this session of Tiny Table Big Questions. I hope you come back next week. Bye-bye.